Following in the very large footsteps of running backs Jim Brown and his idol Ernie Davis, today's guest was a three-time All-American at Syracuse University. He then spent 9 magnificent seasons slashing through pro football's best defenses for the Denver Broncos, saving that franchise from moving elsewhere. He was selected to the College Football Hall of Fame in 1983, but it wasn't until 35 years after playing his last game that he received his due and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Floyd Little. I got to ask you, what took them so long?
Well, that's a good question. Here's what I think. I think all things in time. I get that expression from my wife, all things in time. The 2010 Super Bowl year was the 44th Super Bowl. My son turned 44. I wore the number 44. It took 44 voters to approve me, and we have a 44th president. So this probably was the time for me.
Yeah. Your number 44 is on the Ring of Fame in Denver. You played all 9 years with the Denver Broncos. Jim Brown played all of his 9 years with the Cleveland Browns.
And we were also the 6th overall pick in the first round of the draft. And I just found that out.
Jim Brown was really your idol growing up, right?
Yeah, he was. He was a Cleveland Brown, and in those days we didn't have a lot of TV to watch or any great athletes to watch. So as a football player, as a little kid, you had to have a team. You had to pick a team that you like. And Jim Brown was a guy that I liked because he was probably one of the greatest running back, if not the greatest running back of all time. So he was my idol.
You mentioned as a kid, when you were 5, your dad passed away.
Yes.
What was your dad's name?
My dad's name was Frederick Douglass Little. He was named after Frederick Douglass.
Oh, he was.
The abolitionist.
Yes. And you had 5 siblings, so there were 6 of us. Your mom had a year apart, right?
Yeah.
Where were you on that ladder?
Next to the last. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was the 5th. So
did any of your siblings aspire to play football or any other sports?
No,
Really?
It was very, very challenging back in those days, growing up in the 40s and the 50s. You know, things were not really, really great for African Americans during those days. And my sisters are all older than I, and I have a brother younger than I. So they didn't aspire to be athletes. They wanted to be successful people.
Your mother must have been a very strong woman.
She was, and she had a strong right hand too, if you ever felt it. But yeah, raising 6 kids as a young mother was very challenging back in those days. We were on the welfare system, and for 6 people or 7 people in a family, you didn't get a lot of opportunities to get things to wear. So we wore a lot of hand-me-downs and ate a lot of cornflakes and grits and oatmeal and things like that.
I would imagine it toughened you up, but it also made you, as you mentioned in your Hall of Fame speech, angry.
Yeah, I was. I was a strong but angry young man in school, and I used my strength in ways that became my weakness. And as you've heard, I got kicked out of school and was down for the count and had no place to go and nothing to do. And then
how old were you then?
I had had an altercation with a couple of teachers in 7th grade. And I physically took out a student and a teacher, and I was kicked out of school. And it was angry. It was angry all the time. And then the vision of my late father came to me and said, Floyd, I've chosen you to take my place, to do what I could not do and to finish what I could not finish. That's when I came to myself, and with the help of those who saw the good in me, I was able to get back in school.
We'll be back with Floyd Little and talk more about his rapid rise to the running back at Syracuse and the Denver Broncos right after this. I'm back with Pro Football Hall of Famer Floyd Little. And Floyd, in your speech, you talked about the vision of your father. Elaborate on that a little bit, if you will.
We talked a little bit off camera. I was a strong but angry man in school. That I mentioned that, and then the vision from my late father that really snapped me out of the direction that I was going. Mm-hmm. So I had to beg my way back in school. And I remember one of the teachers named Harry Ness was one of the teachers that helped me, and Bob Schreck.
Was this in New Haven?
This was in New Haven, in junior high school. Mm-hmm. And they helped me get back. And as a result of helping me get back, I started to become a leader in everything that I did. And they helped me become the president of my class. Mm-hmm. So I ran for president after being kicked out of school and won. And I became a different person. I became a person that understood the value of an education, and I wanted to be able to carry on from where my father left off.
Were you a good student?
No. I had to work harder every day than anybody in school. I had to study twice as long, twice as hard, and I didn't have a whole bunch of skills, but I was able to get through.
Well, a lot of times anger, sports replaces anger, or it's a good way to replace anger. Is that when you became interested in football? Is that when you became interested in athletics?
It really is, because we had the little Sandlot team, and you're right. I didn't know. That's when I started playing in Troop Junior High School. As I mentioned, my sisters were my biggest fans in Troop Junior High School, where I first put on a football helmet. And I did, but I started out as being a receiver. But they couldn't get the ball to me far enough. I'd run further than the quarterback could throw the ball. So then they
run the ball.
So then they made me a lineman. I was a guard, and I would get out in front of the back too fast, too far, and they'd get behind me. So they figured out that they better make me a running back, give me the ball and let me run with it. And it's so funny because at one of the Sandlot games, the high school coach, Dan Casey, came to watch us play. And when he saw me play, he came to me and says, "Where do you live?" Because if you lived on that side of Dixwell Avenue, you went to a rival high school named Wilbur Cross. If you lived on this side, you went to Hill House. I lived on the right side. So he says, "Well, I can't wait for you to come to school." And it's really great because I went to school and they had some great running backs there when I got there. And I was like the third string running back when I was able to play.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Wasn't there a situation where Coach Dan Casey sent you in and you were trailing 21-0 on your first run?
Yeah,
you ran 67 yards?
I had to beg to get in. I was on the sideline and two of the guys had gotten hurt, and I asked the coach to let me go in, and the coach says, "Go sit on the bench. It ain't time for you yet." I said, "But you know, we're losing. What can you lose?" He says, "Go sit." What you say your name was again? I said, "Floyd Little." He said, "Floyd, go sit on the bench." So I sat on the bench. So I had enough. I went up to him. I said, "Coach, let me go in." And he says, "Okay, I want you to go in, and I'm going to let you run play. But I want Bill McCoy to carry the ball." So I went in. I got one play, Tim. So I go to the quarterback. His name was Leo Pavlo. And I said, "Leo, the coach wants to run a 40 sweep. What do I do?" And he says, "I'm going to turn this way. I'm going to have you the ball, and you do it." I run 78 yards. I went and sat back on the bench. So we got the ball back again. The coach says, "Hey, Floyd, come here." I said, "I already had my one play, coach." So I went back in. I scored 4 touchdowns. We beat a school named Warren Hardy, which was our rival.
28-21?
Exactly. And I scored all the touchdowns.
Oh,
Never sat the bench again.
What was the coach almost a surrogate father to you?
Dan Casey was, he had been so great for me. It came to pass when I didn't have enough. I was a little older to play my senior year in high school. He did everything he could to get me into a prep school. And because of my grades, I wasn't, good material to go to college or any place.
Right.
But he worked hard to get me into a place called Bordentown Military.
I want to talk about that. Hold that thought. We'll be right back with Floyd Little right after this. Number 44, familiar running back for both Syracuse and the Denver Broncos for 9 years. And we were talking during the break, you have got to tell our audience what you just told me. What's great about your life right now?
What's great about my life is I'm in a place in Pro Football Hall of Fame where they can never trade me, cut me, or fire me. So I ain't going nowhere ever again. So I am in the greatest place in the world right now because, you know, a lot of people worry about being fired,
sure,
traded, or cut.
Sure.
They can't do that anymore.
Well, there was a time where you were recruited by not only the coach at Army, Paul Dietzel, later to be the coach at LSU,
right,
but by none other than General Douglas MacArthur. That's a heavyweight.
That is a heavyweight. And he had a suite at the Waldorf Astoria, where I was able to come into his suite, and he had Mal Good, he had Elston Howard, he had Roy Campanella in that suite.
Wow.
When I approached.
Speaking of heavyweights.
That was a great time.
They were there to encourage you to go to Army?
They tried to, they encouraged me to try to be, I had just got back from Army, where I had broke every record that Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis had set in their physical endurance
in the trials of physical endurance.
Physical endurance tests. And after that, I had met with General MacArthur, and he said, you would be a great general. You could become the first African-American general in the United States Army. When you think about that, today, I would have been General Colin Powell's boss, Norman Schwarzkopf's boss, General Petraeus' boss, had I gone to the Army.
Wow.
But something happened on the way.
What?
I met Ernie Davis the day after. He came to my house, unlike the movie. He came to my house and he sat between my mother and my sisters. And he put his arms around them and said, what's up? And they fell in love with Ernie Davis. And we went to a place called Jack O'Sullivan's, a restaurant on Yale's campus, and we had dinner. And on the menu they had steak and lobster, and I never had that before. And I ordered it, and we went into the men's room, and we were there for 20 to 30 minutes. And I looked at Ernie, I says, I think our food is getting cold, let's go eat, I'm going to Syracuse. And we went and ate, and 3 months later he died. And I had given him my word.
Had he been diagnosed with cancer?
He probably knew, but nobody else did. I didn't know. He had just signed a contract with Cleveland and with Pepsi. And he's everything that anybody would want to be. He had everything. He was attractive. He was 6'2", 215, 218. He well-dressed, well-spoken, very articulate. And this is who you want to emulate as a young man back in those days.
It seemed like all the great running backs in the country, but Syracuse had one every year. Jim Brown, Jim Nance, Larry Zonka played with you, and Ernie Davis.
Exactly. And then we had Joe Morgan after him, and then we had Rob Conrad after him, so, and Moose Johnson after him.
Again, Ben Schwartzwalder had to be, again, the following of surrogate father since you'd lost your dad, right?
Yes, he was. And when we talk about Ben, I remember that I had hurt my ankle against Navy, and everybody was booing me, and I can't handle the booing. And
Not many of us can.
And telling me I wasn't any good. What kind of an All-American are you? You know, you are horrible, you're horrible. So I decided to quit. And I went to see Ben and told him I was done. And he says, Floyd, you've done more for our program than anybody. I would like for you to stay, but you don't have to come to practice. You don't have to play ever again. But I promise your mother that you would graduate. And oh, by the way, here's something that I want you to have I've kept since I jumped in Normandy in World War II. He was a paratrooper. And he gave me his wings. He says, I want you to have these. And I went home, back to my dorm, cried, didn't go to practice, but showed up at the game. We were playing Florida State. Fred Biletnikoff's team was there. And I went to the locker room and I put on my jersey and I went out and I scored 4 touchdowns that day to beat him. And then I think today, how many of those wings that Coach Schwartzwalder have in his drawer? He may have had a box of them there that he would use them in situations like this.
Oh, sure.
But he was a great coach for me, and of course Ernie Davis softened him up. He had a tumultuous relationship with Jim Brown, but his relationship with Ernie turned him around, and I was the benefactor of the good relationship.
Because he had so much respect for Ernie?
Well,
I guess Ernie
when Ernie
commanded
died,
respect.
I think what happened was when Ernie won the Heisman here, I think it was in the Waldorf, and Ernie met President Kennedy that day. and Ben Swartzwelder was a part of that. So when they recruited me a year later, he had really, really changed his whole attitude about African Americans. And I was the benefactor of all of the great relationships that coaches have with their star player.
By the way, on that booing bit, I heard this quote recently that booing says more about the booer than the booee.
But
so you kind of tucked that away. I'll be back with Floyd Little. I'm going to let you we'll be back with Floyd right after this. My guest is Floyd Little, the great Syracuse and Denver Bronco running back. He's had his number retired every place he's been. You were the 6th overall pick. Was the AFL, did they have a different draft selection than the NFL in those days?
It was challenging. No, but that was the year of the common draft.
First year?
The first year of the common draft.
In 1965 or 6?
In 67.
67.
Where the leagues merged that year. So my year was the first year of the common draft. So I had no other team to go to except the team that drafted me. So it was.
What did you think? Had you ever been to Denver before?
No, and I was a little upset about it because I was supposed to be drafted by the Jets. A good friend of mine had gotten to know Sonny Werblin and Weeb Ewbank, and they had seen me play in Yankee Stadium and
Shea Stadium.
Shea Stadium. And they said, we got to have this guy. Weeb Ewbank said, he's the best running back I've ever seen. And they says, if we can get him, they had the 9th pick and Denver had the 6th pick. If they can get me to the 9th pick, they was taking me in the first round, and I was going to get the same deal that Joe Namath got.
$400,000 bonus?
Exactly.
All the money in the world.
Oh, my gosh.
What bonus did you sign for with
$10,000.
$390,000 difference.
Less, yeah. Signed my check at 7-Eleven, got 2 Slurpees and the rest in 20s. That's what I got because I did not get into the 9th pick. It was agreed that if I can, and Val Pinchback, who was a great sports information director at Syracuse.
Right.
When the time came for the draft, Lou Saban, the coach of the Broncos, went and asked Val Pinchback what kind of guy Floyd was. And he says, it doesn't matter. We've already decided to draft Gene Upshaw. And Lou Saban said, well, no, is he the kind of guy that we can build our franchise around? And Val Pinchback said, yeah, but we've decided to draft Gene Upshaw. He says, I'm going to draft Floyd Little. So with that decision, it cost me $390,000.
That's right.
I've never recovered.
You were the captain the first year with the Broncos.
Every year I was the captain because I had a work ethic that unlike anybody else's. I was the first one out and the last one to leave, and those young guys saw me in my ability to create life and goodwill and all those kinds of things. So they says, I want this guy to be our captain.
Football Hall of Famer Floyd Little, whose personal credo was simple, and this is a quote, I choose not to be a common man because it is my right to be uncommon if I can. And you're uncommon in what you do by going around in the different cities and talking to the young people like you do.
That's the greatest thrill for me, is giving back to those who are less fortunate, those who have experienced life like I had as a young man.
So what do you tell them?
With Roland Williams, we teach life skills about being respectful, integrity, look people in the eye, always showing up on time, dress accordingly, don't have your pants below your waist. I mean, all these things that these young people are influenced by others to be different. And we do this, and we were in the Virgin Islands this year, we're in St. Louis, we're in Rochester, we're in different cities, in Las Vegas and so on and so forth. And we have about 300 kids every year over a weekend that we teach.
Have you had any feedback from these young?
The feedback is those who've gone on and come back. That's the success of a program, when they go on and do other things and then they come back to be a part of it again because they know the value of it. And this is what I enjoy, and that's what I enjoy doing today.
Well, I've enjoyed having you on my show too, Floyd. Thank you very much.
This has been special. I hope that you have me again one day.
I hope to. Floyd Little's been my guest. I'm Tim McCarver. Thanks for watching.